Alright, it's been 3 weeks since I trained in the Philippines. It was exactly 15 sessions of Heyrosa De Cuerdas Eskrima. I wanted to document my journey from start to end. I wanted to justify the huge amount of raw footage I took, right? Make notes and references for myself, but make it entertaining for friends and family and people potentially interested in the art to watch as well. But really the name of the game is transparency and replication, right? Because I want to be honest, authentic, showing exactly what I had budget-wise, what I was prepared for, what I was lacking in, so that people who want to replicate the journey can learn from my mistakes and know what they're going into before they go to the Philippines as well. So yeah, let's begin with our breakdown of Heyrosa De Cuerdas. Choosing to go to Cebu, Philippines to learn Heyrosa De Cuerdas Eskrima was a pure passion project. It is out of pure passion or obsession. There's no monetary return of interest for me. Like, I tried to reiterate over and over to Richard and Dondon that, I'm not trying to steal the techniques and rebrand them and repackage them under some cringe Western name. I'm not Filipino myself. I don't believe I have a right to teach it, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's just, I was inexplicably drawn towards Heyrosa style almost a decade ago, because back when I was doing Eskrima in college, one of the first results on YouTube when you typed in Eskrima was the Heyrosa De Cuerdas group, with their unorthodox strikes and crab-like footwork. I was just inexplicably drawn towards the style. Like the speed, as well as the notion of sparring with the armor, it really appealed to me. After our third lesson, I noted in my video journal how I felt like Richard's roving eyes during his Amara. Amara is like the shadow boxing Eskrima, but with a stick. I felt like his searching eyes was a part of him. As in, like, it was not pretentious. It was 100% something that Heyrosa De Cuerdas Eskrimadors deliberately try to practice. Like that sort of lethal awareness. And I still can't pull it off. But you can't take that away from Richard. Like, it's part of him in the same way a boxer's chin is just tucked into his throat forever, you know? Like, in a sense, Heyrosa De Cuerdas was also a part of me for nearly a decade, ever since I saw those YouTube videos, because I would be trying to imitate their Amaras. Like, I'd try to throw in a fast few, like, Wittix. I'm not really hitting anything, but I was clearly inspired in the same way a musician is just from observation alone. So therefore, learning Heyrosa De Cuerdas Eskrima for me, it's like a bucket list thing. It's been a long time coming, and I knew it was going to happen one day. So I'm glad I finally committed to that journey. It was really difficult for someone to locate a unified school or a website for Heyrosa De Cuerdas to book classes, like you would do for something like Muay Thai in Thailand. I contacted Richard Molian through Facebook because through my extensive YouTube searches, I found one guy right in his video description: if you want to learn Heyrosa, reach out to Richard Molian on Facebook. This is like a recent video, like from 2024 or 25. Once I was in the Philippines, it was a really informal setup. Like, Richard would ask me the location of my hotel. I would share the address. I also asked him if I could record our first meeting and also if I could record the training sessions, which he agreed with. And after the first lesson, I decided I found what I was looking for. And I discussed payment with Richard, which was 1,200 Filipino pesos per session. The lessons themselves are conducted really informally. No bowing or contrived formalities, which I enjoyed. It's just very old school, like almost improvised training. Because I felt like Richard had a sort of vague idea of what he'd teach me that day. But I later learned from his friend Dondon, who is a fellow IT guy, who has a side business of making tactical knives. Shout out to Ursula Knives. He told me how Richard himself is a master instructor of Heyrosa De Cuerdas Eskrima. And in the old days, Heyrosa was taught basically through trial and error. As in, students would just be holding a stick or a knife and be like, try to hit me. They'll be sparring like 90% of the time. And every now and then the GM would stop and be like, hey, stop. Do you know why I'm hitting you? And do you know why you're not able to hit me? That kind of thing. So this leads me to the hindsight part, or what I could have done or prepared differently for next time in training Heyrosa in Cebu. It really comes down to three things: time, sleep, and the language barrier. So with time, it's really just that 3 weeks is not enough. Technically, my 15 sessions in total was only above 2 weeks, but my sparring form just isn't to my level of satisfaction by the final session, but it makes sense due to the short time I had. Also, in hindsight, I really wish I sparred other Heyrosa students earlier, but part of that was kind of like I had to earn the right to meet other Heyrosa students, like earn their trust that I wasn't some psycho or a spy sent to hurt their students through sparring, right? But I felt really during the final sessions that sparring Saddam, Richard's friend, that sparring someone with a different style really opened my eyes to my weaknesses in Heyrosa, as well as drawing attention to areas I need to improve, mainly through just being unable to hit the forehand on target one. Now, for sleep, it's common sense your sleep quality will help you process and retain information, but when you're traveling, it's really easier said than done. For one, the quality of your hotel will really affect your sleep. Now, I lucked out with Dragon Inn Hotel, which is seriously one of the best budget hotels. I've stayed in Cebu City. The facilities were clean, and they offered the best quality bed and soundproofing at only $13 a night for the weeks I stayed there. But if you're traveling, you inevitably want to do travel stuff. Now, I was a good boy. I did not go to any bars. I didn't lift at any gym. I didn't go to any beaches or did a rainforest mountain hike. You know, all the stuff that you're supposed to do in Cebu. But I never left my hotel after 12 because I was always in my hotel just resting after training, just trying to battle against my depleting phone storage by immediately editing and uploading that day's footage. But because of this, sometimes I'd be up until 2 or 3 a.m. trying to edit and upload. My phone would get hot and it would have to cool down, and the Wi-Fi was always slow. And because of this, there was like 2 or 3 sessions with Richard where he was like, "Dustin, you okay?" And I assured him, like, "I'm fine. I'm just tired." I had this dilemma where I had to ask myself, do I get an energy drink right now so I can get the most out of this training session, or never mind because it will still mess up my circadian rhythm for tonight? So the easy solution to sleeping late in my situation, right, was to simply go in there with more than 50 gigabytes free on your phone. 20 or even 30 is probably not enough, especially if you're recording a lot of videos at the rate I did. And the final impediment to learning Heyrosa was the language barrier. Now, this isn't something completely out of the locus of your control, but learning Cebuano or Visayan, it's a huge time investment, right? Like, even though Richard knew English, his English was limited. I did try to make some laughable effort in learning one Cebuano word or phrase a day, which you'll see me put at the end of every video. But if you already knew Cebuano, I would imagine your learning would skyrocket compared to mine. Or even if you're a Filipino and you know Tagalog. Because language is the ultimate facilitator of education. And in my case, it was more like a filter, like a paywall. Because I felt a lot of the concepts and nuances kind of just flew over my head. And if I did not already possess a die-hard obsession with this obscure martial art and proactively asked questions, I would have walked away with even less takeaways than I did now. So seriously, if you're a non-Filipino watching this, saving up for a trip to Cebu to learn Heyrosa, you heard it from here first. Learn the language. Get a greater ROI for your Eskrima education. So what's in it for you? Why would you, the viewer, want to learn Heyrosa De Cuerdas Instructor? Like, why would you want to learn this particularly obscure system of FMA? Well, one surprising benefit for me was that some aspects of Heyrosa were translatable to the popular weak half dose power stick fighting with padded armor. Now, what happened was I met local teenagers at the same park I trained at. I befriended them and convinced them to let me spar. And after almost a decade of not wearing the armor, I was able to pull off some really fast Heyrosa attacks immediately using the strange angles of Wittix, such as Target 12 and the backhand flicks. And that was really satisfying. But if you're not into the sport, right, and you kind of just want to supplement your other FMA system, I can think of no other system where they make Wittix, like this fast flicking strike done primarily by the flick of the user's wrist, the focal center of all their attacks. Heyrosa De Cuerdas practitioners are also really proud of their check hand, but to me, if you really want to hone your Wittix attacks, like be able to attack from really any angle or in a tight spot with a stick, Heyrosa should be the go-to art for learning how to do all of this. But the most valuable reason, and ultimately my goal, right, aside from the sentimental personal desire to learn it, it is the desire to acquire the game. I view Heyrosa sparring as a game. And it's not to disparage it, right? I'm not denigrating and saying like it's something less. But I really mean that Heyrosa sparring, with its implicit rule set, is a treasure in my eyes. Because learning how to spar at full speed without hurting your partner and without any safety gear, it's truly invaluable. The only other FMA I can think of off the top of my head that knows how to spar without armor on is Pikiti Tercia. And that's via footwork and a completely different training methodology and philosophy. Now with Heyrosa, the sparring desensitizes you to pain and fear subsequently. In the very first video I took of my training session with Richard, I noted how the sparring in Heyrosa hurts, despite not looking like it does. Like all those years of watching the sparring videos of Heyrosa on YouTube, it's not the sound of sticks clashing merely. It's actually sticks battering skin and muscle. So there's a lot of things you can't pick up from videos, and you'll never really be able to understand it unless you experience it firsthand. So after sparring Heyrosa for a long time, I can imagine how doing something like a Colada Challenge or even Dog Brothers potentially might not be as scary, but unlike Dog Brothers, you're sparring with control. And the rules of the game of Heyrosa enable you to continuously spar every session, daily, without the risk of breaking your partner's hand or eye socket. So being able to learn how to spar full speed without armor, truly it should be what you strive to acquire, should you choose to learn Heyrosa. Also, it's in the sparring when you realize the criticisms of certain techniques really get addressed. Like in my earlier videos, I'll express doubts as to why Richard is teaching me certain puño disarms and hooks this early, or the efficacy of the grappling that they do. And it's really popular in FMA to refer to any Filipino grappling as dumog, but Dondon let me know that in Heyrosa, they don't have a particular name for the grappling. They just simply call it in English body language, which I believe it's taught to encourage the student to still fight for the weapon even after being disarmed. You'll see Saddam do this to me after I disarm him in these sparring videos. So therefore, the foot sectoring or locking, as it's called in Heyrosa, and the strange swimming motions of seemingly lazy wrestling in Heyrosa, they're really meant to work within the context of Heyrosa's game, that is, Heyrosa De Cuerdas Escrima sparring. Out of respect to my teachers Richard, Dondon, and GM Bonchow, if at any point you want me to remove these videos or just edit something out, you know how to reach me. Message me, leave a comment, and I will comply. This is not about folding, right? It's about respect. So, as I mentioned, I don't believe I have a right to teach art. I'm not Pinoy myself, and I'm not trying to monetize this. In conclusion, if you want to train Heyrosa De Cuerdas Escrima from its native birthplace of Cebu in the Philippines, you can reach out to Richard Molnion on Facebook. I had a strict cash budget of $600 which is 34,760 PHP that I dealt for not only food, but also used as cash for payment for martial arts. So in addition to Heyrosa De Cuerdas, I also trained in the Hurricane Team Zapata Gym, which taught Yoyan Taijutsu, which cost me in total 5,500 PHP for the few sessions and private lessons I paid there. In comparison, I spent a total of 18,000 PHP for my 15 sessions of Heyrosa De Cuerdas Escrima. At some point, I realized the cash budget I imposed on myself would not be enough for lessons, so I had to actively seek out restaurants that did accept credit cards or debit cards for payment, such as Jollibee's or Mang Inasal. For hotels, I limited myself to using card only and Trip.com for booking, and I found the best value in Dragon Home Inn as a home base in between training FMA in Cebu. This video, as well as the upcoming videos of my day-to-day lessons, were made to justify the amount of footage I took and try to make something watchable and entertaining, as opposed to some huge, boring, and unintelligible mess. The aim was to not only make my video notes helpful and useful for myself as future reference, but also something fun to watch for friends and people interested in the martial art to view. Also, Richard and Dondon did tell me that GM Owit basically told him to spread the art before he, on his deathbed. So in a way, I interpret that as tacit approval to release these videos. Also, some days for my training will be missing because I see some really harsh things about FMA that would probably get me excommunicated from most circles, because I was editing and voicing my thoughts on the fly while at Cebu. So there's no going back and retracting them, unfortunately, and I don't feel like going back to voice over them. There's still many cool things I didn't touch upon about Heyrosa lore, such as its history and bits of trivia, but that's not for me to divulge. It's best that you contact the Heyrosa members and earn the right to hear the stories straight from the source.